We have three, I think, really interesting presentations. The first is from McKenna from the FTRC.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Ed said, my name is McKenna. I suppose I should give you my credentials before giving you the lecture, if you like. My background, whoops, okay, don't stand too far outside mic range. My background is I spent more years than I care to think of working as an IFA. Someone has to do it, and indeed I think I'm followed by somebody that's still working as an IFA, and I applaud you, sir. For the last 17 years I've spent my life looking at the technology that is used in the financial services industry. Is it fit for purpose? Frequently not. What do we need to do to improve it? How can we work smarter? I think really the background that Eddie asked for today was about market needs. I'm almost going to talk about things before market needs, which is really background, things you need to consider. If you're looking at trying to take a proposal to that sector, some of the issues that you should consider beforehand, because frankly if you don't, you're going to get shot down in flames. If you think the Dragon's Den would be hard, pitching to life companies is 10 times harder. So, sum up technology in the personal finance market. You'd have to start with technology at a snail's pace. It really has been. To give you an idea, the IT equivalent of Latin, for those of you that were born in the internet generation, you'll probably never have heard of something called EDI. But electronic data interchange is what we all used to use before we were able to use XML and other methods of communicating. And it's alive and well and living in the life and pensions industry. I was talking to an insurance company only last week who were quite happy to tell me that the server on which their commission system sits is 17 years old. Now, not that it would have any effect whatsoever if they suddenly stopped paying commission to their advisors. No, just a terminal effect. But that's, a classic example of all the industry standards about making payments to IFAs are built on what is the IT equivalent of Latin. It really is a dead language. But there are lots of reasons why things take so long in financial services. For example, we have to deal with an organisation called FOS, the Financial Services Ombudsman. Interesting bunch of people. They are they're quite literally above the law. You can go through a process with a client, give them perfectly reasonable advice, they can sign to say that they understand that advice, and they can then complain to FOS, and FOS will say, you terrible scoundrel of a financial advisor, you didn't have telepathy that the client would change their mind at a later date. Those of you that are on that side of the industry will, I'm sure, validate. I'm really not exaggerating. That is what you're facing when you deal with FOS. What that means, therefore, is we need to look forward at whatever we do and think, is there a way in 10 or 15 years' time that somebody could look back at what we did previously and decide that it was wrong? Retrospection is alive and well and living in financial services. And as I say, FOS, quite literally, their mandate is that they are above the law. It's really important to stress that because Eddie made a very good point at the last session that financial services, why is it an area where it's that much more challenging for the technology? Well, it's basically, if you get it wrong, you could end up going to prison. And that's not an exaggeration. Unlimited fine, personal lifetime bans for designated officials who behave in a manner that the regulator deems is not appropriate. And again, retrospection. So you can do everything that might be reasonable in a totally appropriate way, and then they can come along 5 years later and tell you it was wrong, in hindsight, and fine you, and ban you for life. And by the way, you can't insure against that fine. So, one of the reasons why, when you're talking to organisations in this marketplace, they may seem a little bit tortuous, is that there can be an awful lot on the table. I think the other area that's important to think about is security. It is, after all, your money we're talking about. How important is security? The number of applications, a number of things that I've seen in the past where, yeah, there's one small thing wrong, the security's not that great. When you're dealing with money, understandably, people take these things very seriously. So let's just have a look at something that might seem like a good idea. Structured capital at risk products. So I should probably ask how many people know what a structured capital at risk product is? Show of hands. Okay, a handful. It's a complex financial instrument that probably shouldn't be sold to consumers, but frequently they are. And there is a long history of people putting forward structured products that look very good at the time, go wrong, and then all of a sudden, you've got to unwind it. For example, there's a particular case that was in the papers at the moment, a thing called Arch Crew, which was a structured capital product, where Capita basically have had to put, there's a number of organisations, but Capita, it was acknowledged yesterday, are putting up the lion's share of compensation, which the Ombudsman thought they've got it settled for 52 million, but the people who've incurred the losses are coming back. It's probably going to be more like 100 million. My point being, these are complex financial instruments which are not easy to understand for the consumer. If you could find a way of doing it, you would find people beating a path to your door. The problem is, can you pick up every angle when you've got to think of all the complexities, all the counterparty risks, who takes the liability, and if you're producing something and it gives the wrong information, are you going to be able to afford the liability at the end of the day? Sorry, I'm really not trying to depress you, just trying to give you a bit of market context. When it comes to talking about applications in financial services and use of technology in financial services, the chances are that most things have been tried before, and people from outside the industry do have a habit of coming, looking at the marketplace, thinking, oh, that's very easy, I can fix all of that, and suddenly finding it's not that easy, and there are reasons why things take a long time. So coming back to ideas, when you see an idea in the marketplace, I think really the key thing is to understand if it has been tried before, why has it failed? Many of the ideas that you will have, that you will take forward to the marketplace, are perfectly valid. It's not a matter of if they're going to work, but has their time come yet? And I think that's particularly important when we look at the changes that are about us today. We look at the way that mobile devices are rapidly transforming the marketplace. Mobile devices doing to the PC what the PC did to mainframe systems 15, 20 years ago. We are right on the precipice, if you like, of the beginning of a tipping point into a new era where we could all work in very different ways. And I think, to end on a positive note, that the need to move to that mobile infrastructure probably presents the biggest opportunity to people in this room today. Historically, the systems that have been used to run insurance companies, to run financial advice practices, have been large, cumbersome systems trying to do everything. App infrastructure doesn't work like that, but there is a challenge. Go right back to the beginning. What matters? Two things: accuracy and security. So if we're going to, and there is a desperate need to come up with ways that lots of small, very clever applications can talk to each other. But if they can't talk to each other, all you will end up is vast amounts of rekeying, and actually we'll be going backwards, not forwards. So that's a good note on which to finish.
Thanks, Ian. That was really, really interesting. Anyone have any questions from the audience? Please.
I'm just curious to know if you have come up with any idea which works.
Well, there's been a lot of progress in the marketplace, and I suppose, yes, there are quite a few who've come up there with them.
Okay, do we have anyone else? I have one more.
Do you think the innovation there might come more from consumers starting to pull the software towards them rather than from the corporations raising their financial?
There's an appetite amongst consumers for doing far more themselves, for far more self-service. We are seeing a massive transformation. moving, if you like, in many cases, moving away from an advice culture to a self-service culture. Other changes in the marketplace are going to make it more and more difficult for people to get financial advice, but I'm not going to take the thunder away from the next speaker. I'm sure we'll touch on that. Yes, there is a desire for consumers to have more information, but the issues are how can companies safely and accurately meet that desire.
When you talk about apps talking to each other, could you be a little more explicit on that?
By all means, exchanging data between each other. Yeah, if you have a situation where you've got a series of apps that cover related issues, typical way that a financial advice system would have been built over the last 15 years would have been to have one large system that would have looked to address all the different permutations of advice and different product sectors and different savings needs that the customer could have. App infrastructure. If you built an app to do that, in fact, there is one particular app out there that is very good at covering an awful lot of information. The problem is, load it onto an iPad, and the iPad has a habit of folding over.
Do you see regulation as a big enemy of consumer empowerment?
It's an interesting prospect. Maybe you should ask that question to the FSA. I think the problem with regulation is that the regulators rarely think through the law of unintended consequences. They mean well, but only last week you've had a situation where they have published guidance on so-called simplified advice, which directly contradicts guidance that they gave 4 months ago under a paper on assessing suitability. So 2 FSA papers in the space of, I think it might were March, the other one was March, so maybe 5 months. 2 FSA papers in 5 months, one directly contradicting the other. And that's not unusual.
Are we all done? Thanks very much, Ian. Thanks very much, Ian. Gary, would you like to come up?